about big tech. And what's funny is you and I were talking before, this is a second year where there's been a panel saying what's going to happen in big tech. Elizabeth Warren has called for a breakup of big technology. Where do you stand on this?
Well, we have, a certain number of standards of the antitrust laws, and we will look at, every industry and apply the laws based on the facts and the evidence. I don't know if breaking up any particular industry, without having an actual investigation and showing they're doing competitive harm is the right approach for antitrust enforcement. But that's an area that, antitrust enforcers should be looking at, and we certainly are. And
there's big technology, and then I feel like there's Amazon. There isn't any panel I do or any conversation I do that Amazon doesn't somehow come up in that conversation because there's such a bigger and bigger player, not only in retail, but so many other industries. Does Amazon, do you look at them as a different category?
Well, Amazon has been a disruptor in a lot of different sectors, and they have played.
Is that a good thing from your perspective?
Well, I think when you're an initial disruptor and create more efficient products and services and lower the prices to consumers, that's always a positive thing. The problem becomes when you have market power and you take certain actions that might actually harm competition, which ultimately will harm consumers. And that's the type of conduct that we look at. As I've said before, big itself is not bad. It's big behaving badly.
Right.
That becomes a problem for antitrust laws. And that's certainly an area that we would be, interested in.
Got to ask you, Attorney General William Barr has talked about, getting more information on big technology. Have you guys had discussions about big tech and maybe what needs to be done?
Well, I won't comment about any private conversations I've had internally, but the Attorney General, we're fortunate to have somebody with his background and his knowledge. As he said at his confirmation hearing, the role of antitrust and how some of the largest companies in our economy are interacting is something he wants to explore, and I think it's an important area. But he's somebody who, from his background the last 25 years in the corporate world, is uniquely, I think, not only qualified, but really appreciates the role of antitrust law. He's been a plaintiff and a defendant in the industry, and he's actually argued in the European Union before the Commission himself.
Does that make him more sensitive to business side, or?
I think somebody like him who appreciates free markets, like me, and I think like most people in the antitrust world, is that our role is really to protect competition itself. It's not so much picking, a business or one competitor over another or one technology. And I think it makes him sensitive and knowledgeable about the role of the free markets and ultimately the benefits of having a free market economy.
Right. Makan, I want to ask you about some different corporate situations. You met recently with T-Mobile's John Legere. Tell me about T-Mobile and Sprint. What was his message to you? What was your reaction?
Well, without commenting on any pending mergers, of course, we meet, and I think there's been some reports that we have had meetings with the parties, which is very normal in a process.
Right.
And of course, CEOs of merging companies will defend their merger and do that. And beyond that, it's a transaction that's under our review, and it's ongoing investigation that we're doing in the transaction.
One thing that's come to mind, I've heard this in discussions, are you considering Sprint's struggling financial position in your decision making on this deal?
Well, Sprint.
And the argument that, a failing firm, maybe doesn't impact competition versus a stronger firm financially.
Well, ultimately, our goal is to make sure there's competition for the benefit of consumers and innovation. And Sprint has been a great company. They have been an innovator and a disruptor on the price. They have, I think there's been reported they've raised the issue of what's called a flailing company, and whether or not under the antitrust laws, the laws recognize what's called a failing firm defense, and there's strict guidelines about that, and we certainly will apply the law and the facts that they present to us to that. Whether or not those standards are met, we'll have to wait and see for the conclusion of the investigation.
But it's definitely a consideration.
It is something we consider, absolutely, when parties raise that as an issue. It doesn't mean it always wins, but it's something we consider.
Okay. I want to also ask you about Fox's RSNs. Big Three has complained that Charter Communications and Liberty Media are really trying to kind of thwart its bid. Ice Cube's Big Three, Basketball League, we've got Serena Williams, Snoop Dogg, they're all investors in this. Is that a factor?
Well, I've seen the reports of the allegations of the issue, and there's been letters that have been sent to the division. it's certainly when there's allegations of corruption of a bidding process at an auction, it's something that raises issues for us to look into to see if there's actual credible evidence. And I don't know if there is one here yet, but it's something that we always looked at when the free market process of bidding is corrupted. We just had a recent criminal investigation where a group of Korean companies had corrupted and fixed prices in sales of fuel to the U.S. government in the Pentagon. And we announced about 5 settlements and not only criminally but civilly recovered in that. So it's an area that we are concerned about.
There's a lot of areas that I know that you're looking at. The other thing I want to ask you about is generic drug companies. I know the Department of Justice has been investigating that price fixing by a group of generic drug companies. Where are we on this? Because there was some reports that your office has kind of declined to approve some new indictments in that case. Is that accurate?
That is not accurate. I have flatly denied those reports. There's requests for opening grand juries and indictments that I review, and sometimes I send them back for additional information or investigation. But as far as declining any indictments, that is just not accurate. I can confirm it's been a matter of public record that we have a criminal investigation into the generic pharmaceutical industry. We've had 2 plea agreements of 2 high-level executives of one of the pharmaceutical companies, but it's a broad investigation looking at multiple products in an area where we have some of the most vulnerable clients and the elderly who buy these generic drugs.
Do you anticipate more charges to come in this investigation?
I would anticipate that.
Soon?
I don't know. The process works itself. We don't have a particular timeline, but we're in the process of developing that. We've had some public filings in the private cases in Pennsylvania, so there's some information out there in the public record.